You losers. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the QUACKCAST. This is QUACKCAST number 441. I'm Ozone Ocean, and with me is Tance. Hi, Tance.
Hello.
Hi, Pitsy.
Heyo.
And Bainesy. Hi, Baines.
Hello.
Oh, so we're all on board, and we're talking about competition versus cooperation in the world of comics and webcomics, and maybe society in general. I don't know. Which is an interesting subject. I sort of suggested this to Tance, and she created a post about it, which is really good.
So it's Ozone's fault, guys.
It's a cooperative topic. Do you think so?
It's Ozone's fault. I had nothing to do with it. I was just
No, it was a cooperation, a pure cooperation towards a central goal.
Yeah, okay. It was the thing, and that's a nice segue, I guess. Before we do any of the introductions, that's all of his own about the featured comics and everything. But it is a good segue into how people can cooperate and create something that is bigger than themselves.
Yes, exactly. So, the featured comic. So, I have to bring up that. And the featured comic this week was The Adventures of Kevin Kidd. Okay, so here I am with Kevin Kidd. Hello, I'm Ozone Ocean, and my feature this week was The Adventures of Kevin Kidd. In the middle of nowhere, a strange little boy appears in the forest. He can't speak a word, and there's something very strange about him. But the workers on the little farm take him in and do what they can to make him comfortable and welcome. There's more to this little fellow than meets the eye. Something dangerous and alien. Possibly scary. This is a creepy story, and it's slowly unfolding into something bigger and better. The art is quite stylized and unusual. None of it looks digital except for the lettering and word balloons. It has a very unique aesthetic. The story is a sci-fi drama. Of course, this comic is all done by Hyperfab Mag, which is such an interesting nick. It's really interesting looking comic. There's not that many pages yet. It's just beginning. Like a lot of the comics I feature, they tend to be just in their very early stages, which is really good for new readers to come along and sort of get the feel of it and not be intimidated by a gigantic archive and sort of read along as it's posted, which is a really good thing to do. Yeah, this is a sci-fi comic. With a bit of a Twilight Zone kind of feel, or I don't know, maybe a bit of a traditional sci-fi, stranger meets a group of people and has to interact. A fish out of water kind of story. An unusual person thrown into an environment he doesn't totally understand, and the other people around trying to understand him. And no one really knows about this child's potential, I don't think. Not just yet. He's sort of displaying it, but it's not really, people haven't really seen it. They sort of attribute these really bizarre happenings to something else. So, but we'll see how it develops. And there is a bit of a menace just being introduced now as well, the antagonist. So we'll see what that eventuates into. Anyway, I hope you enjoy The Adventures of Kevin Kidd by Hyperfag Mag, and it's rated T. And that was the featured comic, The Adventures of Kevin Kidd. Alright, so next up we have the music. Gumulus has given us the theme to a comic called Moonscapers. So thank you very much for that, Gumulus. Moonscapers. It's back to the mid-80s with Beverly Hills Cop. Not really, but this bouncy electronica sound will make you think it is. It has a jaunty little sound and nice fast rhythm, and a little bit of reverb for that authentic feel. It puts you in mind of neon light effects and retro 1980s futurism, bright, angular, vast, and slightly unsettling. So take it away, Gumwallace, with Moonscapers. And that was our featured music. Thank you very much for that, Gumwallace. Moonscapers. Moonscapers. All right. Wider than a mile. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, so we're talking about the idea of competition versus cooperation. So, okay. To frame this idea, traditionally we have been taught that competition is like the be all and end all. We need competition in order to go forward, and this comes from philosophy. From I don't know, it's very part of the 20th century philosophy, sort of based on economics and theories of like natural selection. Goes back to the whole Darwinism kind of stuff. So competition is what creates bigger and better things. Like it's all mythology based on that. And there are a whole lot of logical fallacies that, you know, resulted in that being like the key idea, the key philosophy of the Western philosophy of the 20th century. And it comes around today, and we've sort of viewed a lot of things through that lens. And today we're viewing comics through it, but people are viewed like, okay, economy has to be made better through competition. Competition creates bigger and better and faster things. And then we look at war through that, and we think, oh, wow, war creates all this great technology that we get. You know, we have, capitalism, all that kind of stuff. It creates stronger things. Better, stronger, faster. We get radar and jet aeroplanes and all this kind of stuff. But that's a mythology based on viewing things through that particular lens. You make a whole lot of assumptions, and it's motivated reasoning. It's false. You know, the jet aircraft was actually created before the Second World War. Radar as well. All that technology was not created in the Second World War at all. It had existed. It only got better because the Second World War prioritized certain technologies that were good for war. Mm-hmm. In reality, the Second World War actually slowed down technological advancement massively in all fields. It slowed it to a crawl because it prioritized only a few things that were good for war. And that's what competition tends to do. Anything that's not good for a particular goal are minimized, so we're not going to do that. Only things that work towards the goal are prioritized. So from my point of view, I see competition tends to be actually not very helpful. It's only certain things get pushed forward. It doesn't create bigger and better things. It just creates one thing that becomes dominant and pushes everything out. You know, like Betamax and VHS. There was a huge competition in those things. Actually, Betamax was better. It didn't have movies that were quite as long, but there were smaller tapes. So, you know, they're easy to transport and and cheaper to store and all that kind of thing. But it created better quality video, better quality audio, all this kind of stuff. It was the default, the main thing used by TV stations for years after it sort of dropped out of the popular thing. So yeah, competition kind of failed that. It didn't create a better product in the end, and that has been...
you could say you could say, like really the whole Tesla versus, oh my God, I'm so tired.
Edison.
Yes, versus Edison paradigm, in the sense that Edison did everything he could in order to basically quench the uh, the type of current. I have it in Greek. I just don't have it in
DC
English.
current versus AC.
Yes.
AC/DC, the band.
Yes, exactly. So, which would be actually if he had succeeded and Westinghouse wasn't backing Tesla at the time, that would have been disastrous because it is far more energy consuming and cumbersome to use current that is only goes in one direction.
Direct current, versus
yes,
AC, which I don't know what that means.
Alternating. Thank you.
Alternating current.
Finally, my brain decided to work a little bit.
Through cooperation, we both achieved the result. You see?
Exactly. There you go. So yes, competition. There are ways to compete, I guess, and that's something that we should acknowledge. Because if you compete just to quench the other guy, then you are competing in actually commanding the market more than in perfecting whatever it is you're doing, or just going for the bigger, better thing, which is the narrative of the competition in the market and competitive economies. Which of course happens because you assume that all the players in the game will play it straight and nobody will cheat, rather than do the work to create something better than the other guy. Like, okay, instead of inventing a third kind of current, assuming that that would be amazing and blow the other two out of the water because it's so amazing, it's easier to just, cut the funding and slander everything to the people and electrocute some dogs.
Yes. Well, yeah.
So that is the product of competition, in the sense that there is this faith in humanity that shouldn't exist, in the sense that, oh yes, we're all gonna go through the straight and narrow and nobody is going to try to bulldoze through and set everyone back just to be able to have this short-lived or long-lived, depending on how you look at it, window of complete dominance. Whereas people actually, as a humanity as a whole, regresses.
Yeah.
So
a good example of that is like in the modern day is the iPhone versus Android thing. So Apple came out with like what people imagine as like a revolutionary product, being the iPhone, which it actually wasn't. It was more of an evolutionary product. So they came out with that, so you get like a little computer in your hand. The phone is like expanded to do so many more things. And Android was coming along at the same time. They came out with their thing, just Google Android, slightly afterwards. And Apple tried to be dominant in that market by suing all the producers of Android phones into the ground, like Samsung and all that kind of thing. And so you have that competition in, like, that is competition purely in the wild. That's how it's working. And that actually served to make things worse, because the original iPhone was a piece of crap, really. I mean, it was like a really interesting, good thing for its time, but with the stuff that Samsung was doing and these other companies, they were creating something that was way, way, way better, way more interesting, could do more kind of stuff. And Apple was trying to limit. You could say, oh, they're trying to limit competition, but they weren't really. They were competing as you know, competition works. That's how it works, by trying to squash the other guy. And fortunately, that did not, succeed. They did not dominate the market. So yeah, we had more iPhones, we had more Android phones, and other kind of things. And now, there is more things on the market, but so you still have that competition between iPhones here and Androids there. But the thing is, in the Android camp, you have so many more different like producers all making different phones. You have a lot of different choice, because that is a more cooperative market, which means there's a lot more interesting things happening, because everyone is they can all share the same operating system, but the hardware can be different. So if you go to this company, you can get something with a perfect, amazing camera. If you go to this company, you get something with 2 screens. Or maybe this company, you get something like with 4 cameras on the back and a keyboard. So, or like a pen, and you can draw and stuff like that. So that's how, in the modern world, competition and cooperation really kind of, really are illustrated there. People imagine that these things are so good because of competition, but really it's the cooperative aspect that really sort of make things better. Just a pure competition, if it was just between iPhone and Android, then it would be just shit. If it was one or the other, but it's not one or the other. It's one here and millions of different things. So anyway, that's not really what we're talking about. That's like a characterizing the idea of cooperation versus competition. We're talking about it in the world of comics. Okay. So, all right. You guys, Pitt, Baines, Chance, how have you experienced competition or cooperation in comics?
Well,
Okay. Please go.
I haven't seen much competition in a negative way at all. It definitely, for me, it's sort of just, I would look at myself beside other artists sometimes and say that, oh, they're a lot better. Or, normally I'm a lot better at everything than they are. No, I'm just kidding. It's the other way. It's like you look at the people who are like do it so well, they write so well, they have that magical thing that like draws you in. You're like, oh, like, how do you do that? Or you look at their art is at such a high level, their writing, or the speed at which they produce pages. It's like,
God, yeah.
Wow, like and so you kind of stack yourself up against that a little, but I would say that's very minor for me anyway. Like I don't feel that a lot. Maybe by the nature of webcomics, or maybe partly being on the Duck, where it's not really a competitive kind of atmosphere. Like Tans kind of says, like webcomics in general, like are not really. It just isn't really like that, And that's been my experience too. It's very kind of mutually supportive. You kind of try to comment on other people's things and lift them up, and they do the same for you, and it's kind of like people are at the level they're at, and appeal is very different, and it never has the feeling of like trying to compete for customers. I mean, at least in my area of webcomics, there's no real money to it anyway, and you're not really, I don't feel that it's competing for readers either, or for time. Like you were saying on the video, I think, like, the idea that people will only read one comic or whatever, it's not really true, So it's more a thing of like, you're trying to find the people who will like your comic. You're trying to get as many readers as you can. So it's competitive or selfish, if competitiveness can be equated with selfishness. It is in a way, but it's not really, you don't need to bring anyone down to do that. It just doesn't work, So yeah.
So you're saying it's a bit of a false paradigm?
I think it might be limited. I'm not totally sure. Chance?
I don't know about any false paradigm. I think that sometimes that there are levels, in the sense that art communities that are all about the art may have different interactions and different ways that they generally interact with each other and with their products than strictly corporate world, where the point isn't the quality, it's not even the content necessarily, it is the profit. So there is that, and we have to take that into account. However, what I have noticed, especially as we generally go into a trajectory where more and more webcomics monetize their work one way or the other, there is a Patreon, there are merchandise elements and shops, there are prints and selling hard copies of the free product. There are many ways where webcomics are now monetizing, and you would expect that that would create a sort of corporate, in a sense, atmosphere between creators. Like, okay, I have to promote my product and I have to quash your product, die, so that I can live. But that isn't happening. At least it's not happening yet, in the sense that people tend to support each other, even monetarily. Most patrons are also creators in Patreon. They are creators, they are also monetizing their stuff, but they are supporting the stuff of others. And it is a culture that is very, very unique in this. And I think that this is actually pushing creativity, if nothing else, more and more. And I have found, I mean, judging from myself, there has been a very significant increase in how productive I am in my comic, although objectively the time that I have to make it in is exponentially less, and it is getting less every day. However, I am producing more within my comic. And that is because I feel the support and I feel people believing in what I do, and I want to respond to this, and I want to give back and make this faith actually count for something that they have put in me. So, and I think that a lot of people act like this. The more that they see that people support them, the more they want to invest in something rather than sit back in their laurels, in a sense, and just, consume whatever it is that they are gaining. So I think that this model of cooperation that exists in cross-promoting and cross-cooperating and supporting each other and generally helping each other become better in every way, including monetizing the stuff, is a model that is unique, at least yet, in our field, in the field of webcomics.
Very much so, because you look at traditional comics, I mean, even in that world, you have a bit of a disconnect between the creators and the audience. And a lot of the audience would, like to be creators maybe, but there's only limited positions for, published creators to be in that lofty world. And, they can't really have a job or work in an industry if everybody is a creator. So there's always that kind of thing, competing for limited jobs in that world. So it's built on like that level of competitiveness there. Whereas webcomics, anybody can be a creator, and maybe like a negative idea is say, okay, anybody can be a creator, but that means you're going to have a lot of shit versus a few good ones, and there's no real incentive to sort of winnow down that, to the good ones, which is of course a really a false idea of it, because we don't really look at people's work as being shit. We look at some people are sort of beginning and getting better, and some people are, reaching a higher level. That's how we look at it, and we're all on a continuum. And it's not like a whole bunch of shit and only good stuff. There's a whole range of things to look at. You can look at some of these earlier creative works, or you can look at some of these greater ones. It's all good. That's really the way you've got to look at it. I mean, I used to hear that a lot, especially in the early days of webcomics. There's always, because there's no gatekeepers, there's no barriers, so there's obviously going to be rubbish there. You're going to have to wade through a lot of rubbish to get to the good ones, which was always so disappointing to hear.
I don't even know if that is true. I mean, I don't think, trying to think back on discovering comics, and I do have a long list of comics that I follow, and I don't remember wading through excrement to find a gem. I really don't.
Oh, geez.
I mean, I have waded through excrement to find a gem in other areas that are very corporate and supposedly go for excellence, but I haven't in webcomics.
Yeah.
I have seen things that don't do it for me. They're not my thing. But I can only think of one or two titles in 15 years or so of reading webcomics, not making them. I hope I'm not that old. I've been making comics for 15 years. Anyway, but at least that long I have been reading them. I only remember one title or two that were objectively either made by a troll or the room level problematic. But that was only two over. Yes, and very far between these two occurrences, and all the other stuff that I have seen, even the things that I don't follow because they are not my taste or whatever, they are very worthwhile.
Yeah,
they are worthwhile. They have something to show. Whether it is something that I want to get is a different matter, but that doesn't make them less significant.
Bad. Yeah. Well, there are a lot of beginner kind of stuff. I see a lot of things, and back in the day, people used to criticize, a lot of sprite comics because they're all copying one particular sprite style that was popular, and they're all pretty crazy and silly. And the idea was, because they're all 14-year-olds doing sprite comics, and they're all sort of variations on a couple of things, Mega Man or Sonic or Final Fantasy, they must be all bad. But that's again, that wasn't really true, because they had their own fans, and they had their own fans that absolutely loved them, and that's who it was for. It was for just that five people who loved it, and it didn't matter if everybody else does. That did not mean all webcomics were bad, or did not bring all the rest of us down. It was just it was just another flavor in the world, and if you're not into it, well, it doesn't matter. There's always something there that's good for you.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's that kind of aspect. Yeah.
And I have to say another thing. There was this period, Drag has always been extremely nurturing.
Yeah.
In new talent, whatever skill level it is, very nurturing, and you can see the progression of artists becoming more and more skilled and encouraged and everything. And I think that is something that is unique to this community that we have compared to others that are more competitive sometimes than not. But there was this very narrow window where we had an influx of a lot of people from other platforms that were very competitive. And often they were competitive in that nasty manner of attacking the competition, in a sense. So, and that, I remember, created a lot of toxic interactions and problems, and stuff, and it arrested the development sometimes.
It did.
People stopped making the comic because they felt that they were being attacked too often. People instead turned into returning in kind. And then that spilled over to third parties that had nothing to do with it, and so on and so forth. So this created also that people became more self-conscious and they experimented less.
Yes.
So going to the safe stuff, because if they didn't do the safe stuff, they'd
lose out.
Bludgeoned. Yes.
That's a very good point. I'll just say that a huge part of that was because there was a competition at the very core of it, which was, okay, whoever has the best comic is going to get a contract to make, to be paid to make a comic. And if you win, then you get it. And maybe you get international exposure. Maybe you have movie deals. So that was at the very heart of it, that competition idea. So you had all these people coming through because they wanted to compete directly in that. And you had all sorts of nastiness. So Tance, that's a very good point. Very, very, very good.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
The thing that I want to say was that the competition can be awesome if you can balance it out. This increased stress that sometimes it inspires people that if they don't reign supreme, if they don't have a monopoly on the scene, then they are eventually going to be very weak or even eradicated from the scene. So if you inspire that kind of stress in people, and this doesn't only happen in webcomics or anywhere.
All right, so I have sort of set it up as a competition actually being bad, but Tance sort of introduced this idea in the video we did, the Patreon video. She sort of introduced this idea of, competition when it works towards a common goal can be a really good thing. So you're all competing to improve yourselves in order to achieve a goal that benefits you all. Now, that's an interesting idea. So you're not all acting as individuals fighting against each other to be the best one. What you're doing is you're working towards something that's going to be better for everybody.
Well, absolutely. And I think it only makes sense to consider that. I think it would do good for us to think of an example to use that we could apply to webcomics to make it more kind of tangible. But to kind of think that we could completely exclude any kind of competition, I think is unrealistic. I think what we need to do is consider it in a way like she was talking about, where, you win, but you bring other people to the top with you when you win, right? And the benefits of doing that is, one, it makes things less dangerous for the victor, so to speak, right? So you don't have all of a sudden, you're not the king of webcomics and people want to topple you and dethrone you. And, you die on the hill of webcomics, nobody wants to die on that hill. Or you could say, for instance, all right, so let's take, for example, a competition where, like you were saying, you win a contract, to make a movie, and one webcomic out of an entire website will be chosen. So say, everybody starts competing to, I'm the best comic, and this comic shouldn't be a movie because, it's made by, this guy who's a Nazi, and this comic, maybe bring that up if it's true, but and this webcomic, shouldn't get the movie deal because it's going to be rated X all the time. And like, I don't know. And then people will start going at each other and shit like that instead of bringing what makes their comic good to the table. And then in turn, it just creates this nasty atmosphere. Whereas if you go about this competition as say like, all right, so, this one comic is going to win, but maybe as, it gains in popularity, it can help make recommendations for other comics that they enjoy that have inspired them, or, people used to do stuff like make web rings and whatnot, like, I have, if you like this comic, click on these other links. And there are some comics who, it's like they became like these trifectas of like popular comics that kind of rose up together because they supported one another. But at the same time, a lot of times they did have to compete in one way or another to like, I'm here to be seen. So long story short, it's not realistic to completely dismiss competition because there will always be competition. What you want is healthy competition.
Good point. Well, so
and you want mediators as well, where it's possible. People pull out the bullshit. Like, hey, you're being an asshole about it. Stop it. I don't know. I'm trying to apply things to the webcomic world. It's not super easy, but.
Okay, a good example of that is, say, El Cid. All right, so yeah, he did a really popular, very X-rated comic, very violent porn comic. But okay, so and he sort of realized that has a limited kind of audience, and there's a lot of barriers to doing that kind of work that he wanted to do. But he got massively popular, hugely popular, even though there were those kind of barriers. But he didn't sort of rest on his laurels and think, yeah, I'm the best, I'm the greatest. What he did was he went around to all the other adult webcomics on Drunk Duck and brought them up with him. So he offered, like, he had free advertising for whoever was doing an adult webcomic in order to bring them along, and he would give people advice and help, and he would actively help other people in that little community that he built. So yeah, he's a really good example of someone who brings people up. Amelius, who does Tabi the Vampire, she has been consistently at the top level of Drunk Duck. But whenever someone has asked her for help, she's always been ready to help them along. More than happy. Just loves helping other people along. And you find that consistently, well, not completely consistently, but often with really popular webcomickers, who people look at them and go, oh man, I wish I was at that top, that bastard sitting up there lording it over the rest of us. And people sort of create this false narrative of, oh, this person, oh damn it, if only, they weren't so, maybe they got popular because they did like deals secretly, and it's not fair, they're at the top, it's not fair. But in reality, when you actually talk to these people, they're more than happy to help out. That's just how the webcomic world is, which is a really lovely thing. But you're saying, healthy competition. Yeah, well, that is a factor, because you have these people who are at the top. You want to get up the top too. So there you have that competition, and it's healthy in that if you ask them for help, they'll help you to get there.
Yeah, and and for some people too, it's inspiring to see that there is somebody who can be at the so-called top, whatever you consider that to be. Probably popularity, probably in this case, because a lot of webcomickers really don't get paid unless you have like a Patreon or something. Things are starting to change a bit, but yeah, sometimes that inspires people to be like, all right, well, I've got this webcomic, and maybe there's some hope for me one day to make something more out of it than I thought I could have. And that's not necessarily, but a lot of times people look down on that kind of reasoning as like, oh, it's insincere. But you know what? I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to see something that you've made do the best that it can do. I would definitely say don't have that be your sole motivation, because then a lot of times, that it makes you turn out shit work. But I don't know. There can be some advantages. It's just, again, highly stressing the importance of healthy competition, or else you have a community that just turns toxic and is at its own neck all the time, and that's, nobody wants to be in that. It would be such a shame if the webcomic communities on the dock or elsewhere would turn into such a stew like that. I mean, the webcomics stew. Stop it.
Well, yeah, you could have unhealthy cooperation too if you were at, okay, like, the old idea of, communism being bad, in that I think it's mostly this idea is mostly like a bit of a straw man. But if you had, okay, we all have to be at the same level, you cannot be better. So look, okay, no advertising for anyone. We have to enforce this at sort of the same level. So, okay, and, no other special advantages for you. Okay, if you're offering this to this person, you have to offer it to everyone. That's how it is. Okay, so that would be unhealthy competition if you enforced absolute equality.
Unhealthy cooperation.
What's that?
Unhealthy cooperation.
Yeah, unhealthy cooperation if, you enforce that kind of absolute equality on everybody all the time, and then things just wouldn't work out. It would stagnate. You'd have stale kind of resulting from it, or staleness. But okay, so that is a straw man. That's like a complete characterization. I don't think that would ever exist. But yes, there could be examples of that unhealthiness in both worlds, but I think you get more of that unhealthiness in the competitive world than you do in the cooperative world.
Yeah, definitely. Especially because, like, when you have competitive groups, it creates inequalities and whatnot, but it also inequality. Yeah, that's what but it also, it creates more fluctuation sometimes. As far, okay, so I'm no sociology major, political major, or anything like that. So I could be talking out of my ass a little bit, but it seems that more competitive societies have more ups and downs, which create unhealthy inequalities. So, all right, I'm trying to, never mind. I'm going to get together what I'm trying to say and then just shut the
Yeah.
If I can add my 2 cents, I finally return computer disaster averted. So we're good. So the thing, I think that what won't touch completely on what Deidre was trying to say, but the element I think that creates the problem, whether you have the cooperative community, let's say, or the competitive community, is when you double down, when you force something on someone else, a sense of imposition, if you like. So if you have, for example, take theoretically cooperative communities, and in my opinion, the communist stuff is nothing like that. It's not cooperative or anything. But let's assume that you have this Walden 2 level cooperative commune where everybody cooperates together. There is no competition and blah, blah, blah. Still, you run a very high risk of having people getting imposed on, because you will want to keep this sort of status quo. Might be shaken up if the cooperative element does not have the room for whatever innovation or whatever experimentation and individually within that community would like to make. And the same goes again. It's really, in a sense, it's the same coin, just on the other side. If you go to the competition styled community, where again you want one needs to be the winner and everyone else needs to be the loser. So in order to remain the winner, you impose rules, you impose situations, you impose conditions that will benefit you and not the community, so that you will remain the winner. So these are the same elements. These are the same elements, just applied differently in a different context. So that's what I wanted to point at, like the mechanism.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I was just thinking of that and trying to apply that to Drunk Duck as well. Whenever there are too many restrictions on things, they tend to benefit one party and impact others, and whoever is in power, because of competition, they make the playing field a bit less fair to everyone else. So that is detrimental. Pitt, you wrote an interesting thing in the comments just there. You care to expand on that, or?
No. I was just also explaining in the comments.
Oh, okay.
And if you guys want to, that's fine. I just don't. Maybe you could make it more relatable. So if you can, feel free. But I just don't feel like I'll be able to bring it back to a sharp enough point, which is why I descended into rambling lunacy.
Well, I was thinking, say, all right, in Drunk Duck, there's a fantastic kind of thing to illustrate the point there. All right. So once upon a time on Drunk Duck, you had a lot more freedom to create your templates for your comics, and a lot more freedom with all these kind of things. And a clever creator could create a really kind of impressive look to their framing of their comic by making a good web page around it on the site. We sort of offered those abilities, and the cleverer among us took advantage of that to create a really, really interesting way of displaying their comic. And okay, so then the site went through a big redevelopment. Certain programmers had certain ideas, and that was restricted. So what happened was, they had the idea of, okay, these creative templates are fantastic, but it takes specialized knowledge to do it, and not everyone has that. Let's make this more equal and give everyone the power to create a good-looking template. For the more creative kind of people who had mastered it, that was incredibly limiting. So that sort of cut us off at the knees. So we couldn't create, a fantastic template for our comic anymore. We had the same tools as everyone else, and everybody had sort of like an equal ability to create like a mediocre template for their comics. So, you had that. But, okay, like for the ability of me and, like I'm on the comic there. I'm on the comic website. I have admin powers as well as just normal comicer powers. All right, so I have slightly more abilities. So I could like help specific people and myself to get ahead of everyone else, like unfairly. So there could be like those inequalities within it. So I'm like displaying this. I mean, I didn't, but I could have. But just because I have like friend connections with various people, I did sort of give them more help than others. So there, I suppose you could say there was like that inequality within competition. I don't know. I'm sort of trying to apply this. I can't really give very many examples because I'm not too nepotistic, but you always will have that within a community. You'll always have someone who is helping out people who they have a connection to. But then again, I would offer that help to anybody who asked. Oh, I'm rambling now as well. I was just trying to think of a good example of inequalities and people taking advantage. Have we reached the end of this this particular discussion, do you think, guys? Now that we're all rambling.
I don't know. It depends. Who do we want to be competitive or cooperative about this?
Well, I don't know. Speaking like as a Gestalt kind of thing, there's the idea of actually having our community compete against other communities. Like I felt like personally slighted when Tapas and Webtoon sort of have sort of come up, and now I feel competitive against that for the whole of Drunk Duck against those two. But that's unrealistic. Yeah. We don't really compete, but you know.
Actually, and now that's a nice element that you brought up. I don't feel that, although I have this sense of community and representation. Like Drunk Duck is my home platform, and Drunk Duck will always remain the one main platform where I launch stuff and do stuff. And if I ever give, I want to give to Drunk Duck rather than anyone else. However, I cannot think of other platforms as being very much competitive for two reasons. First of all, they don't have what we have. We, as Drunk Duck, have a completely different presence in, I think, the webcomic hosting field.
Yeah.
They don't get to do this sort of, I don't know, magic of community.
Yeah, everybody has their own things. So Drunk Duck, we have our own things that make us special. Other webcomic hosts have their thing. And yeah, there is this artificial idea within my own mind, I must say, of us competing against them. But and for certain like people who host their comics on various webcomic sites, they think, yeah, which is the best host for my comic? You know, should I do this one? Should I do that one? But the reality really is that you should put your comic on as many sites as possible. That's how you're really going to get readers, because there's different readerships on all those different sites. And you really should decide upon... I'll just finish this. You should decide upon...
All is good.
Oh, good. Okay. You should decide upon the community that... Well, the webcomic hosting system that works best for you as a person. You know, they have certain tools or a certain community that appeals better for you. Anyway, Tance, go on with what you were saying.
Yeah, I don't know if you covered what I was going to say. The thing is that I feel that every platform has a different character and a different personality. And again, it's not exclusive. These platforms, all of these platforms, they're not mutually exclusive for creators. They often... And I also am one of them. You have mirrors everywhere, in all platforms. You reach different kinds of audiences. You have different experiences, or you learn different things, and so on and so forth. Again, I don't think that there is a competition per se, with the exception of the way that they do features, in my opinion. I do think that there is competition there, especially when it comes to platforms such as Tapas and stuff that seem to be, let's say, talent hunting, let's say, in a way that will benefit the platform, like bringing the clicks. So they get to promote the same recipe over and over and over again. So you always get, with a few outliers, but the um, great um, the great majority of the comics that are being promoted on the first page are very one single tone, like they are the same thing, different packaging, and sometimes not even very much different packaging. So I do think that there is this competitive element in some of these platforms where people, if they want to get on the front page, they have to compete and do a very specific product.
Yeah, they have
that
to
will
work within the
get
same
there.
style. They have to
Whereas,
produce the
for
same
example,
sort of story.
Exactly. For example, our features, on the other hand, are completely eclectic, and actually we aim with diversity in styles, types of stories, levels, skill set, and all of that. We consciously do that. So I haven't seen people ever competing for a feature that I have seen in other platforms. It feels like at some point I probably will attract someone's attention and I will get featured. Doesn't matter what it is I do. If I keep doing it and I like it and I love it, and yeah, someone is gonna notice me and feature me.
Yeah, there's no competition there. We do have like a community run competition every year for I don't know, the Drunk Duck Awards. That's what we call it, the Drunk Duck Awards. So we do have that, but it's a really weird thing, and I've never been able to wrap my mind around the Drunk Duck Awards. I've never ever been able to fully understand how it works, and the competitiveness in that is really
okay. You're slow.
weird.
It's not a competition.
Yeah, I don't know how that works. So we do a competition, but it's not really that competitive. It's strange.
No, it's not really all that competitive, really. I mean, yeah, you have nominations, like nominees, and you have winners, but it's really, it's a fun thing, and it's a really kind of a bonding thing whenever it's been done, I think.
Yeah. That's interesting. So it's a competition, but the best things about it are the cooperation. And that I understand that because they have the these for your consideration pages and stuff like that, so people will sort of all get together. They're all part of the same category, and so they have to promote their comic in some kind of creative way. And so they all work towards the same kind of goal in that. And then you have the people like you, Baines, who work as like presenters and things. So you get a whole lot of you're told who's going to be up for I don't know, a particular award. So you'll put you'll make a little comic or an image with all these different comics up for this award, or and create these like lovely little bits of creation for that, which turns it into something marvelous.
To show your stuff and try to be funny. So there's a healthy competition to it, in a way. I think like you're trying to be attention getting and entertaining or whatever, and compelling. Maybe hoping that some audience will look at your presentation pages and say, "Oh, what kind of comics do they do?" Well, yeah, it's kind of
and
helping, and also kind of helping yourself potentially.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you might.
And I have to say, sorry, because you cut out at some point. You're talking about the awards or about general?
The awards.
Yeah, the awards. Okay. So if you didn't again cover it again because you cut off, I felt a sense of community a lot when we were doing the presentations, not only for your consideration part, like the event, getting all the characters in informal wear and everyone presenting their characters in informal wear and having the whole red carpet event. I really liked doing it, and it felt good to help showcase other people.
Right, so this comes back to yours and Pitz's idea that they put forward of competitive cooperation. That's what the awards are. They are the very illustration of it. It's a big community event that everybody is taking, well, all these different people are taking part of it together. There is sort of competition there. But, yeah. It's not for a big prize. It's just for this little, trophy image and the ability to say that you won. So you can say that you won. You got like the 2019 or 2018 award for this or that. And it's just a fun little thing, which makes it a good competition,
Face is saying in the comments that if the award had more substantial reward attached to it, there may have been more competition about it. And I think this will probably get an element of, higher stakes in the awards. And perhaps the judges will get more pressure to judge one way or the other. So you would need other fail-safes to keep people from getting into situation where things go negative and cooperation starts to break down. But if you put in those fail-safes, if you first make sure that everyone feels they have a fighting chance, first of all. It's not just, it's the all-stars of the top 10 that are all getting the awards because they are a popularity contest, blah, blah, blah. All these things that get thrown around, especially when it comes to other competitions that do have certain tangible, let's say, reward. If you make sure that everyone feels that they have a fighting chance and that the award is quote unquote fairly given, and when I say quote unquote, when you have art, you judge
on art, to
a level subjectively, but there are certain objective elements to it. So if people feel that these things are being adhered to, I think that even with a more tangible reward, that again you would have this feeling of community and competitive cooperation that we were talking about.
Well, and what you're saying is interesting because the Drunk Duck Awards have at times had that. We've had Chubby the Vampire and Death Porn, because they're popular comics that everyone read, and there's been a few others as well. They would always get nominated for certain prizes, and they would get nominated in a whole lot of other things as well. And people would start to think, these things are going to win all the time. They're going to win all that stuff. But the creators of those comics, actually, Emilius and El Cid, were sort of thinking, okay, guys, could you please not nominate for all these things? And then they sort of would formally ask to be withdrawn from various categories, to help make it fairer, because, they recognise themselves that it wasn't fair. And with the rise of, this whole thing about for your consideration and these presentation things, with the rise of those sort of being more of a factor in the thing, that made the whole award stuff a lot more interesting, a lot more fun than just the pure competitions. So yeah, it wasn't that the Drunk Duck Awards has always been like egalitarian and fair and lovey-dovey. It hasn't. It has, through people being very smart, and I'm going to say, even though I'm an admin and say I had nothing at all to do with it. It was all just people come out with their own ideas and, being smart and being geniuses within it. It was them who created this the awards as a good community event and something fun and not something detrimental. Like it was Baines and Nakia and also sorts of other people that I'm not mentioning now. Just No Point, maybe. He was a big part of it.
Many other massive helpers, judges. Jason.
Yeah, Vicky. From
Funny, we're
Just
talking
My
about it
Books.
this much. Is this the first year we haven't done it, or the second year already?
I don't
It's
know.
kind of possibly gone away. So I don't know. It's a ton of work.
It is a ton of work. It is a ton of work, and there may be a chance that it won't happen this year, isn't there?
Well, yeah, it's
Because
August
it is
already.
so. Yeah. Which would be a shame. Maybe we should, come together and see if we can make them happen again. Or,
Oh yeah.
not to wait next year.
Yeah.
We will see.
Force it to happen. All right. Well, we
Yes.
should probably finish the QUACKCAST now, and take that as something to sort of think about how to get the awards going again. All right. Thank you guys for being part of the Drunk Duck QUACKCAST 441. Competition.
Thank you,
versus
guys.
Thank
corporation.
you.
Thank
Go
you.
now.
Thank you. All right. Hey, adios.